Today I am getting back to my roots and we are tying a pike fly. This is a fly that for the past 2 summers has been super productive for me. It's really easy to tie and it's really easy to change the sizes. Right now in the vise I have the small size. It's about 4 inches and I tie it up to about 7 or 8 inches. For this video we're going to shoot for about somewhere in the middle, a medium sized one. For the hook I'm using is a Gamakatsu B10s in a 2/0. If you're using this more for walleye and smallies, especially in this size, I might downsize the hook a little bit, but I pretty much just fish it on the 2/0, and if the fish is too small to get in its mouth, I don't really want to catch it. So to get started, I'm going to come in with a 15mm shank, but you can also just use a normal cut shank or whatever you have on hand. And we're going to start our thread and close off that back end. Give yourself a nice thread base. I'm using gel spun thread today so I can crank down the bucktail. So that means it's really important that you do a lot of wraps, a lot of whip finishes, and a lot of glue because this stuff is really slippery. So we're going to come in with our bucktail. We don't need a whole lot. The hook is going to really do a good job of keeling this fly. And this just kind of helps a little bit and gives the flash a little something to support it a little bit. So get it started. Keep it on the top of the shank of the hook, the shank, and it's really cranked down hard on it. You don't want this going anywhere. Get back down the shank. Getting back on the shank, just really make sure your thread wraps are secured. I'm using a bunch of Flashabou. I don't know how many, maybe 30 or so pieces of flash. I like this flashy. So I do one piece that's pretty long, and that's going to be the final length of the fly. And then take and wrap the shorter section over the top. The only thing I like to do is don't let go of this Flashabou yet. I like to come in and taper it a little bit just so it transitions a little bit more. And then where that shortest pieces, the longest pieces actually of that short Flashabou would come in, that's where I want to start trimming back on that other flash where everything's nice and tapered. Doesn't have to be perfect. So once that's secured, come in with some whip finishes. Come with a couple of them and really pull down in between so you're really making sure that thread is locked in place. Secure your thread wraps with your glue of choice. And hit it with a light. My light's getting a little dead, so I'm going to have to hold it for a little bit longer, but it'll get her done. We'll take that out of the vise and we're going to come in with our Gamakatsu. This is, like I said, the 2/0. I pretty much just use the 2/0 for all of them. Sometimes I'll keel weight this hook. For this time of year, we don't have a lot of water. And I'm trying to keep this fly off the bottom, so I'm not going to add any keel or any other weight. But you can add it. Adding dumbbell eyes on the bottom as far forward as you can also gives a little bit of a jig and kick on it when you're using it. To connect the tail, I'm just using a fluorocarbon. I've never had a fish bite off this tail section, but if you're worried, you can use wire or beetle on. You just want to run both those tag ends down the side of the shank, and you're going to want to keep the loop of the fluorocarbon about the same size as the hook eye on the cut shank or whatever shank you're using on the back, and that's usually a good amount. Just give yourself a nice thread base on that. You're just doing this really to protect your thread. Sorry, not the thread, the fluorocarbon, so when fish chomp on this, they're not biting through. Hit it with some super glue or UV resin or whatever you want to use. If I'm bulking a lot of these out, I'll use liquid fusion and just put the liquid fusion on the thread wraps and start on a new fly. That way I'm always working and I'm not waiting. So let's come back here to about the maybe a little bit forward of the hook, a little bit forward on the shank. Coming with your first clump of bucktail. You want to clean out all those short fibers. And you want this bucktail to be about halfway down the bucktail you had in your tail. So once you get that measurement done, come in here and trim it up, get rid of any excess or short pieces. And just come in with a couple loose wraps and push that around the hook shank. Look around to make sure you're getting a nice distribution. Sometimes you gotta help around the hook point a little bit. And once you're happy, start cranking down on it. You see here some of that's been trapped. Just get that out of the way. At this point, you can still move your bucktail around enough to fill in some areas that aren't as full as they should be. Now, I don't want to cut these ends off. I just want to push them back and advance your thread just a little bit. That looks pretty good. Now coming with another clump of bucktail. This is like we did with the Flashabou. This is going to be a little bit shorter. We're just going to keep working this taper. And that's going to be a little bit shorter than the previous bucktail. Couple loose wraps. And we're going to reverse tie this one in. You want to wrap back and forth a little bit to give yourself a nice platform for your thread. Push that back. Crank down again. And advance your thread. Looking pretty good. Now we're going to come in with our biggest piece of bucktail. We're kind of, this piece of bucktail was a little bit more than this piece. And this is the final piece, so it's going to be the largest of all of them. Measure it. Cut it. And I grab this bucktail down the bottom of the tail, so it's really going to flare a lot. Cover up those previous ones. If you lose some bucktail, it's not that big of a deal. Wrap it back. Advance your thread in front. For the final piece on the head, I have some ripple ice that I've mixed with a couple different colors, and I've cut it in half and trimmed it down a little bit. This head here is going to be about the length or a little bit shorter than the blue bucktail we put in, so I like to measure it. Doesn't have to be perfect. And like the blue, I like to have a nice tag to help push some water, so I'm not going to be too crazy with trimming it. So that's how much we're going to do. Do a couple loose wraps and get this around. Flip around and make sure you're good. That's still a little long, so I'm going to come in with my scissors here and just real loosely trim it. I don't care if I have stragglers. I just want to have it be mainly the right length. That looks pretty good. Stroke everything back, bring your thread forward. And give yourself a little bit of a thread head here. Kind of crowded the eye a little bit on this, but we'll get it done. Put a lot of pressure on this gel spun. And now we're going to whip finish and we're done. You can put eyes on this. I typically don't put eyes on my flies. I don't think they really help, and when they fall off, it can change the shape of the head, which can make it so your fly doesn't swim right. But you can throw some eyes on here at this point if you want. It's going to make sure I don't have any trap fibers. Put some super glue down on your head and you are done. You can crank these out pretty quickly once you get a handle on everything, and you can make these a lot bigger. You can do whatever you need to get it done. And there it is. Great taper, super easy to cast, looks good in the water. Thanks for watching. Have a good day.